Are you looking for ways to grow food for rabbits? G'day there, I'm Dana from Piwakaka Valley Homestead, and today I'm going to be talking about different ways that you can provide food for your rabbits without having to buy pellets. Now, pelletized food really does have its benefits. It has its merits and it's easy and it's quick, but it is quite expensive. If you're looking for ways to grow food for rabbits that doesn't include pellets, or it does include some pellets and you're just wanting to supplement it, I have got quite a wee list of things that you can either grow or forage to feed your bunnies. In the wild, most rabbits will just eat grass and forage, and then during the autumn time they will eat seeds that are happening around the place, and during the winter they will nick bark off of trees. They also chew branches, and they're really careful about what trees they tend to try and chew on, and usually, unfortunately, it is our pip fruit, so our pears and our apples, as well as a few other favourite trees. Rabbits do need some kind of wood to chew on to help keep their teeth down, and so if you can, it's really good to be able to give them the odd stick. Willow is a really good option, and apple and pear are great options as well. Avoid giving them any kind of stone fruit wood though. Cherries, plums, nectarines, peaches, apricots, all of those stone fruit plants are actually highly toxic to rabbits, and unfortunately you can kill them off by feeding them those. Now, before you take the time and effort to grow separate plants to feed your rabbits, one thing you can do to start with is to start feeding them the things that are growing naturally, the weeds and other such plants that are growing around the place already, and make the most of the ones that are growing wild. It will save you work and it helps you weed the garden at the same time. I'm up in my food forest, and up here we have got quite a lot of weeds that are growing. I harvest quite a few of these every morning to feed to the rabbits, and they really enjoy them. They're highly nutritious and it saves me a lot of work trying to grow anything else. This plant is known as comfrey. Similar to dock, it's got a really long taproot, and it goes all the way down and pulls up a lot of minerals up to the surface. Rabbits really enjoy eating it, and it's highly nutritious for them. Clover is one of those plants that are common worldwide. You can tell them by their 3 leaves, and every now and again you'll find one with 4. Now, in this particular area we have got a red crimson clover, which is this one down here. We also have a white clover, and this one here, which is known as red clover. Clover is a perennial around here. It is an invasive weed in my vegetable garden. There are several different types of clover. That crimson clover is basically an annual, so it comes up, it reseeds and it dies down, which is a lot less invasive. This red clover and the white clover, however, are perennials here, and they are creeping clovers, so they will just continue to grow and they spread around and they really do take over the place. However, rabbits love to eat them. They're really sweet, they're highly nutritious. They are a type of legume, so they're quite high in protein, and they help feed the soil as well. Another plant that we have down here next to the clover is this one here. It's known as common lotus, or birdfoot trefoil, however you want to say it. It's got that name because of the seed pods that it develops. They do look a lot like birds' feet. They have this quite distinctive yellow flower that looks similar to a tiny little broom or gorse flower, and leaves like this. Now, birdfoot is also a legume. It helps feed the soil. It's really common in pasture. It can be quite invasive. To start with, I was quite frustrated with it being in my food forest because it really does take over. However, it also dies down over the winter, so I'm not so annoyed about it. And when I found out that it was a really high protein plant and really nutritious for the rabbits, it's quite closely related to alfalfa, also known as lucerne. And so we feed quite a lot of it to our rabbits. It has a protein content of around 20%, which is up there with any fancy type of rabbit feed. Down here we've also, of course, got quite the selection of grass. There's a little bit of plantain, however you want to say it. These are both good options to feed to your rabbits. And also hiding in amongst here are dandelions, which they love to eat. They can eat the greens and the flowers of dandelions, and they're quite nutritious for them. Another thing we have in here is buttercup. Now, buttercup is not so healthy for rabbits. I'll see if I can find some that's flowering. Buttercup has these yellow flowers like this. They're kind of shiny. And a small amount of buttercup in a big handful of grass is not going to do any damage to your rabbit. However, buttercups do have some chemicals in them that if they ingest too much of them at once, which they're unlikely to do if they have a wide variety of food available to them, but too much of it at once can give them a sore mouth and it can give them a digestive upset. So it's best not to try and feed them handfuls and handfuls of buttercup. However, if there's a small amount in what you are feeding them, that's okay. In this patch here you can see quite a selection of broadleaf dock. There's also a variety called curly leaf dock, and you can feed these to rabbits as well, especially while they're fresh and young and green. Once they start getting to this old and red sort of state, they're not so nutritious for the rabbits, but also they contain really high concentrations of oxalic acid, which is not good for them. So if you are feeding them dock, aim to do it before they start setting seed and feeding them these nice lush green smaller leaves. Another place you can get plants for feeding your rabbits that doesn't involve specifically growing things for them is in your herb garden and your vegetable garden. In the herb garden you do need to be careful about what herbs you are feeding them. Obviously some herbs are more medicinal than others and some can be toxic, but there are some that are really common that they can have even just in small volumes. This is our lemon balm, and the rabbits enjoy a little handful of this now and again. And this is our lavender. Lavender is not toxic to rabbits, but in small quantities it can help them feel calm and well soothed. This is tansy. It's really high in tannins, and it is sometimes used in natural worming compounds. So small volumes of that is fine. High volumes of it are not so great. And this in here is my parsley. It is starting to go to seed again, but parsley is a good safe plant that you can feed to rabbits. Peas are safe options for your bunnies. They're quite high in protein, and you can give the plants to the rabbits once you've finished harvesting the peas off them. Now this is another plant you don't want to feed. This is rhubarb, and the leaves are highly toxic. They've got a lot of oxalic acid in them. And the stems are also not good for rabbits, so just stay away from giving them rhubarb. This is my sprouting purple kale, and as you can see it has tiny little shoots and lots of leaves. So small volumes of the brassica leaves are perfectly healthy options to feed to rabbits. What you don't want to do is feed them in large quantities because they can cause gas and bloat. If I was to harvest all of these leaves at once, I would probably be inclined to throw them to the chickens, but the rabbits might get 1 or 2 leaves. Carrot greens. They make a wonderful feed for rabbits, and they're a lot lower in sugar than trying to feed them the actual carrots themselves. Rabbits love to eat the orange bits of carrots, but they're really high in sugar and only as an occasional treat. However, the green bits make a wonderful food for rabbits. Now if you have some garden space and you really have your heart set on growing your rabbits some food, you can grow them some specific vegetables just for them. I would suggest growing them things like silver beet, also known as Swiss chard. Spinach is another really good option. A lot of those sort of leafy greens are a really good choice. Other options are things like buckwheat, barley grass, peas and bean greens, they quite like those. Avoid things from the nightshade family, tomatoes, potatoes, and obviously deadly nightshade. All of those leaves are really toxic to rabbits, so don't give them those. Generally speaking, if a plant is something that you personally can eat raw, then it is something that you can probably feed to your rabbit in at least small quantities. A good, healthy, balanced rabbit diet will mostly consist of grass because that is what they naturally eat in the wild. If you want to know more about raising rabbits, I have a playlist that I have put together for you, and I will put the link for it up here. If you're looking for some alternative pellet-free ways of feeding your rabbits, or just looking for a way to make the expensive pelletized feed go further, I suggest you look into growing barley fodder. There is so much information on YouTube about growing barley fodder that I'm not going to go into it here. But barley fodder at day 7 of growth, it has about 20% protein, 20 to 23% protein, which is great for growing rabbits on. and it is easy to do. You can do it with a very, very simple setup with just some plastic trays. All you have to do is water them a couple of times a day. And the main problem that you get with barley fodder is mold growth, and the way to prevent that is, one, have really good quality seed, and two, give it a soak for 24 hours first in a very dilute either bleach solution or spray it down with some hydrogen peroxide, some food safe hydrogen peroxide. And then just be sure to keep your trays nice, clean and sanitized in between your different crops of barley fodder that you're growing. Turning barley into barley fodder 10x is the amount of nutrients available to them. That's folic acid, vitamin A, vitamin E and biotin, all 10 times as much in the fodder as there was in the original grain. Not to mention the amount of fiber, the amount of protein, and the amount of nutrition just in generally that you can get out of it, making it into fodder rather than keeping it as a grain. Barley fodder combined with some grass hay is all the feed your rabbits will need. All your berry plants, your strawberries, boysenberries, raspberries, they love the leaves and the stalks off those as well as the fruit. And if you're lucky enough to be able to grow what's called tree lucerne or tagasaste, depending on how you say it, and probably you'll have to ignore my accent because it's probably not how you say it where you are. But this particular tree is a lucerne tree, similar to what you have as alfalfa hay in the States, except it's a tree rather than a grassy plant. And it is pretty much just a 100% food option for rabbits. If you can grow large numbers of tree lucerne, you can grow them as a hedge, and you can coppice them, and they do regrow. They regrow really quickly, actually. They're very fast growing. And yeah, they're 100% food for rabbits, so you can just feed them straight tagasaste, or that's what we call it. I'm sure it has lots of other names as well. We raise our rabbits in a colony for most of them, and so most of them live in with a whole lot of others, and we just give them a massive handful of grass and forage every morning for them to pick their way through, and they love it. I have written a book about raising rabbits in a colony, and I also, in that is a whole big section on feeding rabbits naturally. So if you want to check that book out, I will put a link to it up here, or maybe it's up here, I'm not sure. I hope you found this video really useful. If you have, hit the like button, and I will see you in the next one.